Welcome to Scale Her Up, the show for female business owners and leaders who want to grow profitable, sustainable businesses without burning out. I'm Dr. Brenda Hector, a business growth specialist helping women develop themselves and their businesses so they can achieve their goals and enjoy the lifestyle they dream of. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring stories, honest conversations, and practical strategies to help you start, grow, or scale your business. If you're new here, hit follow so you don't miss an episode and come and join our Scale Her Up Facebook community to keep the conversation going. And today I'm delighted to welcome Laura Chapman. Laura's the Managing Director of Chapmans Property Lettings and Management in Edinburgh. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, Laura.
Thank you for having me. I hope I'm inspiring based on that introduction.
Oh, you will be. You will be. Everybody's got an amazing story. Every story is great. If I haven't said it already, can you tell us what Chapman's does?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chapman's is a full service property lettings and management company. So we're based in Edinburgh. 99% of our properties are within the bypass, so flats and houses, and we manage those for private landlords. So those landlords might live abroad, they might live elsewhere in Scotland, or we've got a couple of properties where the landlords actually live in the property above and we rent out the property below. And we do everything. So we make sure the properties are fully compliant. We find really good tenants. We reference them. We do inventories. We move tenants in, do all the utility switchovers. And then we manage that tenancy. And it's highly complex these days in terms of the
Mhm.
legislation and everything. So we're managing the tenancy and we're managing the relationship. And then we do all repairs that are required. We can put in kitchens, bathrooms, and we also manage the end of tenancy process as well, and seamlessly then find new tenants and things like that. All the while navigating highly complex legislation and all the political changes that come about connected to this sector. And we've been doing that for 15 years.
15 years. Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
not
actually our anniversary year this year, so we've got lots of exciting celebrations planned and events coming. So watch this space.
brilliant. Brilliant. You will be, given the nature of the industry you're in, you will be used to change and the goalposts moving and like with all the legislation and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, constant change. And interestingly, I've been a landlord for 23 years, and the level of change, I was a banker after chartered banker after that, before I set up the agency. But the amount of change has been phenomenal. I actually used to run almost training sessions to law firms, which is a little bit, it was always a bit scary educating lawyers on legal stuff, but just to keep them up to date, really, because there's been changes of legislation every single year, lots more compliance, a lot, which is really good, a lot of safety stuff. But then COVID, there was like, can we go into properties? Can we not go into properties? Should we be doing these sorts of tests? Should we not be doing these sorts of tests? And then lots of changes in terms of full reviews of the whole tenancy regime in Scotland. Then we had post-COVID rent freezes. Now we've got the new Scottish Housing Bill. So honestly, I have never, had I known there was going to be so much change, would I have done it? I don't know. But yes, we are very responsive and proactive when it comes to change because it's constant, absolutely
And
constant.
is it, this might be a bit controversial, is it change for good? Is it a good thing that these
Yeah.
changes are coming in?
That's a really good question. I don't know who's listening. So yeah, do you know what? The safety stuff I think is good. It's really important. Lots of house of multiple occupations, student type lets. A lot of that legislation came in the early 2000s. That was to make tenants more safe because they're living as individuals in a shared property and there was an awful fire and things like that. So safety is really important. The electrical checks, really important. So I have no issues in terms of making sure our properties are safe. I think some of the issues I do have though is I don't understand why private landlords have to make sure their properties are safer than other properties. So an owner occupier doesn't need to have the same level of safety set up in their own properties versus a private landlord. And I understand we're running businesses, and we now have smoke alarms are required in private houses, but I just find it frustrating that it's always a private rented sector that are coming first with all the changes and sometimes putting on rather onerous and unrealistic demands on landlords. In terms of I'm all about safety. I want to sleep at night. I want my tenants to be safe, and I want the neighbouring properties to be safe. I want floods, fires to be detected, and everything else. So I have no issues in terms of safety, and I have no issues in terms of. So a major tenancy regime overhaul took place in around 2016. And Scotland is devolved in terms of housing. So you're seeing a lot of stuff in England right now. Scotland has very much led the way. And a lot of that has actually been really good in terms of the professionalism of the sector. We are incredibly professional and really good letting agents are highly skilled practitioners. So I think the elevation of the sector has been really good. Having a clear framework for encouraging best practice and demanding best practice is really good. The frustration is when others don't follow those same examples and aren't then penalised. And but yes, but equally it can go too far. So sometimes the frustration is that targeting landlords can win quite a lot of political votes, and that's actually not always helpful actually for the tenants
Yeah.
because emergency rent freeze legislation, now the new housing bill, some of it is going too far. And it means that tenants will pay a price. So rent freezes always lead to rent increases, and they're not listening to the sector. They're just going almost for headline winning votes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think on the whole, improvement is really good and constantly evolving, upping our game and doing a better job. But margins are getting squeezed and squeezed. And so we need to be sensible and look at, the private sector isn't just one part, the only part of the housing crisis. It's one small section, and they can't be looked at in the same way as everything else. But yes, some good, some not so good.
I'm liking the part about professionalism, and I think we're probably going to go down that route a
Yeah.
bit. You mentioned that you've been a landlord yourself for a long time. Is that what inspired you to start the business?
Yes and no. So yeah, I've always wanted to have a property, and weirdly, I bought my first property when I was suffering from post-viral fatigue, so ME. So I
Mhm.
was literally crawling around in my final year of university, and I didn't really have much to do because I couldn't go anywhere apart from apply for graduate jobs and look for properties online. And gosh, that was back in 2002, and I managed to get a mortgage offer based on a job that was going to start in September, a job that I didn't even take up at the end of the day. And I bought that property in the March of my final year of uni, couldn't afford to live there, so rented it out straight away. But when I did that, I did get agents round to speak to me. And they were lovely, very nice. But I couldn't afford the luxury of outsourcing this at that time. But also, I'm all about customer service, and I didn't feel they'd be able to deliver the same service I would expect for a
Mhm.
price that I was prepared to pay. So I managed the property myself, and then, long story short, I ended up gearing that property, and I bought another property, and that's how it all started. But when I, but during that time, I was working as a banker and I became a chartered banker. But it was around 2008, 2009, with the huge banking crash and the subprime market, that it was the environment I was working in. It was a big corporate company and it was really good in so many ways, very go-getting and everything else. But when, excuse my French, the shit hit the fan, we couldn't come together. And it was quite a toxic environment. And the outside world hated us, but we couldn't come together and work as a team. And I found that really challenging. And I have family who've been entrepreneurs, and it's always been in my blood. And I didn't know I could have children at that stage. And I just thought, why am I staying this very safe career when I've always wanted to do my own thing and don't know if I can have children anyway? So what would I be losing out on? Turns out 18 months later I had a child, but anyway, that's another matter. But I think for me, it was I wanted to set up my own business where customers came first and the culture was really important. And it was only when I left banking, I worked with my then husband installing kitchens and bathrooms. And I was then set up the letting agency. So it was a lady going into care, needed help, tried to give me a book full of signed checks. And I was like, I don't want anyone looking after you. They're going to rip you off. I'm going to do it. So 15 years ago, I took on my first client and it came from there. It is about property, but it's also about business, wanting to have a really good business, a really strong culture. And I've always been very honest, and integrity has been really important to me. So I wanted to bring all those values into a business that I could influence and control. And I was in charge of that narrative, if that makes sense.
And it was something that you were already involved in.
That I was
Yeah.
or wasn't, did you
You
say?
were because you were a landlord yourself. So you were,
So I had the practical experience of being a landlord and the emotion of moving in and moving out of that property and moving tenants in and moving tenants out. I had the financial acumen of the banking, so reading a P&L, understanding gearing, leverage, and these sorts of things, and all the great structures of a corporate company, and also the practical experience of actually putting in kitchens and bathrooms myself. So it all made sense. And yeah, so that's where how I got to this
so the,
where I
the
am now.
the desire was to have a business and the rest of it fitted, it made sense. If you
Yeah.
hadn't gone into property, what do you think you would have done?
I don't know because what I really wanted is I wanted a business that dealt with people but also had a recurring revenue stream because I wanted the business to be generating income if I wasn't there every single day. I'm still there every single day, but I had thought about estate agency and all of these sorts of things, but that was very transactional.
Yeah.
And I wanted something that was recurring income, something that would build inherent value in it. I knew I was going to sacrifice pension contributions and salary for a long time. And but just knowing that there was a regular cash flow so I could really have that confidence in recruiting, in retaining staff, and yeah, just being having more control and visibility and having something that not only produced an income but produced a value at the end of the day as well.
That's good. A lot of people don't think about that when they start up the recurring income. And because if you've got a recurring income, there's less stress of having to sell.
Yeah.
Lots of people get into business not realizing that they have to be a salesperson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it is slower, I think, in terms of growing a recurring revenue-based business. And it's very much based on relationships. And it is slower because the first client I took on, I think, brought me in £60 a month, and that wasn't going to pay any bills. And in fact, every time I took on another client, once I had my child, I was like, oh, I could do another half day putting my child into nursery and things like that. So it was much, much slower in terms of the growth, but it meant really solid foundations. And I was still doing kitchens and bathrooms. So that was bringing in some kind of chunkier cash flow. There's ways probably I would have done it differently if I was doing it again, but it meant really strong foundations. But it was slower at the time. Now, growing at a great pace. But actually, I'd probably say we've grown 20% a year every single year since we set up. But 20% on where we are now is different from 20% on where we were back then.
So you said that there's things you would do differently. But what would you do differently? So for anybody that's
Yeah.
listening, what would be the learning that you've gone, I did it that way, but if I could go back, I'd do it different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so difficult to tell completely and thinking off the top of my head as well. But because everything you do has led to where we are now. But I think one thing I was really clear about is I wanted to provide a really high quality service. It wasn't a race to the gutter. And so it was going to be a sensible price that we were charging our clients. We aren't the cheapest, but ultimately, actually, I feel we save our landlords money, we enhance the values of their property. So actually, it all comes out in the wash, and actually, usually we end up being a better option for my clients. But I think what I should have done at the beginning was in order to get more clients under the belt, because 70% of our new clients come from referrals from existing clients, I should have done more offers. So saying, look, first 6 months free, not instead of, or I will give you 50% off for the first 6 months, things like that, just so I could build that momentum, build all the different levels of experience and go from there. So I took on 6 clients in my first year. I wasn't chasing money at the time because I was doing the kitchens and bathrooms and we downscaled our lifestyle costs. But I think had I done more offers then, I would have grown proportionately
Mm.
faster later on. What else? I probably would have systemized my processes faster. So I only really started to really, really document everything I did in around 2018, which was when I was invited on to, sorry, an accelerator program with RBS. And I had a business coach then. So having a coach, brilliant, really helpful. But I then had lots of experience, but I had staff, but I was trying to work out how could I replicate who I was and how could I help them replicate me because people were buying me and it was my name above the door and things like that. I probably would have started documenting my processes sooner. And I'm just trying to think what else. again, I would have done more networking, but I didn't because I then was where I was living and a young child and everything else, that was more difficult. But and social media wasn't quite as strong then, but I definitely now would have leveraged that. And I don't know, the only other thought I had is should I, if I had known I was going to be setting up an agency, would I have been better going to work for an agency first? And it's a really funny one that because I
That's
often
an
think about
interesting.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have never worked for a letting agent. I have to develop my own set of rules, obviously with the legislation in the background and everything else. But with imagining me being the client and actually imagining my mum being the client because she's got very high standards. And if I could keep her happy, I could keep everybody happy. But oh, this is where my I'm in my mid 40s now. The brain goes off on
Oh, I
tangent.
hear you. I hear you.
But oh, what was I saying? It's a shame we can't rewind the tape and you can hear what I'm saying there.
You were talking about whether you
Oh,
should have worked in
working
an
in an
agency.
agency. Yes, because I do see other agents out there who grew quicker than I did. And what they had done is work within an agency, got to know lots of clients, set up their own and took clients with them. But it's really interesting because part of me wished in hindsight I'd maybe done that. But on the other hand, I don't know if I would have picked up the wrong sorts of practices because I find if I recruit from the industry, when people come to Chapman's, the way that we do it is quite unique and we're very supportive of each other, but there is nowhere to hide. And so everybody knows that what they do impacts other people in the team. So there's a huge amount of personal responsibility that's needed. And that sort of that you need to want to be helping your colleagues as well and not letting them down. And yes, I think people who we've recruited from the industry don't always work out because I prefer my homegrown talent because I think what we do is quite special.
Well, they're not used to the culture that you've built.
The culture, the I don't want to be
Processes,
derogatory
system.
of other agents, but such high levels that we work at and the processes, yeah. And it just all of these different things I can't say how different we are because I've never worked in another agency, but I do know we are different. So yes, so the jury's out whether or not I would have worked in another agency, should have worked in another agency or not. But maybe I could have worked in private banking. Maybe I could have pivoted for a year or so whilst working in private banking, getting to know wealthier clients who might have properties while setting up the agency in the background. But I'm very much, I finished banking, I'm doing something else, and I couldn't concentrate on something else until I'd moved on. One of my strengths is being an activator, which can be a negative, but I just needed to have that complete headspace away from banking to work out what it was that I wanted to do.
So I'm going to take you back to something that you said earlier about you included having family in the decision process in starting up your business.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you
Mhm.
didn't think you could have, so you might as well go and do it. So do you think that, or did you think before you started that having kids was a blocker to running your own business? Or was going to be a challenge in your own business?
Yeah, I think it was definitely was always going to be a challenge, but I think it was about that safety net and the security. So the bank I was working with, final salary pension scheme, and I think I'd have had 6 months full paid mat leave and 6 months half pay and sick leave and everything else. So you were leaving a huge safety net. And my other half was self-employed. This decision was, and very conscious of I wanted to have a salary in order to get my own mortgages because as soon as you
Wow.
become self-employed, it's really difficult to get mortgages, and that definitely paid out to us. So I did everything I could in terms of my mortgages whilst I had the PAYE there. So there's all those sorts of things that came into effect. But it was really interesting because even in the corporate life, once I got married, people are like, are you going to change your name? And I was like, I don't know. Oh, you're one of those, are you? Oh, what do you mean? And there was a constant sort of little niggle or a narrative. Oh, she's going to go and have babies now, which found it very frustrating because I was trying unsuccessfully for a number of years. But actually, whilst I was trying, I was like, this job I'm in would be very suitable for having children because it was a very flexible job and everything else. So it is difficult and because you're told right from day one or from you're about 16, as soon as you almost look at a boy, you're going to fall pregnant. So you've always got that narrative. And I think now looking back, what would I have done? It's so difficult to know because you just don't know how quickly and if you will fall pregnant. But it is in your mind. I had my son and I was in intensive care, in and out of hospital, and I was in intensive care working. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was not easy. No maternity leaves for both children, no downtime during COVID. It was full throttle, and yet I had children at home and everything else. It's not for the faint-hearted, and I have no family living nearby. So I think these are all very important decisions. I think if
Yeah.
you've got family and you've got that network and natural support network, it might be a different decision. But I think you'd be crazy not to be thinking about it.
I think it's come up in conversations that I've had with other guests that I've interviewed. Our society is not set up for us as women to be working and having businesses in the same way as men do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's where the problem is, isn't it?
I think so. It's better. I know when I had my son, which he's now 13, I think we got 16 free hours once they were three. Whereas when I had my daughter, we got 30 free hours of nursery care, which was amazing. It was transformative because if I'd had that with Harry, I would have been able to, but I couldn't afford any extra childcare. So I think that has been amazing. So I don't want to denigrate that. And I think post-COVID, the workforce is much more flexible and we are able to do things differently. And with social media as well, I generate a lot of new business through sort of Facebook groups. There's one called Egg, which lots of people will have heard about in Scotland. That's been hugely helpful because I'm physically unable to go out and do the golfing, going to the pub late at night and those sorts of things. I'm not from the old boy network. But yeah, I mean, if something's going on and you haven't got family, you've got no other backup and support. And so that is challenging. And if you are trying to work with a young baby, yeah, I don't know. There probably would it would be really good to have more support and
Manage.
things like I love the fact that now my business is in Edinburgh and I stay in Edinburgh a few nights a week, but I live in Crieff and my children now go to schools in Crieff in Perthshire, and they're open on a Friday afternoon till 3:15, and they have as opposed to in Edinburgh where it closes at 12ish. And then you've got, I remember signing up for the school saying, okay, so when I was in Edinburgh, in Bruntsfield, it took me 2 years to get one afternoon childcare session for my child after school. Whereas when I came to Crieff, I said, so what's the waiting list? There isn't one. Right, so how long do I have to commit for? You don't. So how do I get after school cover? And she said, you let us know on the day. Oh, oh my God, that's amazing. That's what we should have. Much more flexibility for because still the burden falls on mums all the
Mhm.
time. This morning I had a phone call. She sprained her arm. I had to race down to school to give her paracetamol because the school couldn't give her paracetamol. And you're like, for goodness sake, they should have electronic forms for me to then sign saying, give her paracetamol. You know, that just came to me at the top of my head, but I'm sure there's so many more things out there that would support working parents, full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
So how did you manage when the kids were really small? Because I know it gets a bit easier as they're approaching teenagehood. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just got a teenager. No, that's a whole different kettle of fish. It was really challenging. At different times, my then husband, so I was working with him doing kitchens and bathrooms, and then as my business grew, he started working for me. So that was helpful, and he qualified as a letting agent because qualifications came in 2017. So it was very helpful having that sounding board and someone who can dip into things. But not everybody can run a letting agency. So it was just a juggle, working all hours. I got a postnatal doula, which was amazing. These are people who will come in and do anything that the mum needs within reason, and she would bring the baby to me for feeding and she would cook me a meal. So I had a postnatal doula for about 6 months. Best money I ever spent,
Wow.
but I should have been allowed to pay for that through my business, almost like an
Yeah.
executive PA or something like that. And I wasn't. And that's frustrating. I then had a nanny for about 6 months, just for 3 afternoons a week, because I couldn't get my son into after school care. Whereas I could get my daughter into full-time nursery, but it wasn't economic to have her in full-time nursery and but still have to look after Harry and things like that. So it was just hard. There was no sick leave. You just had to work and you would work on weekends if you needed to. I'm permanently on call anyway, but just in case there's a flood and things. But I don't know how I did it actually. When I look back, I don't know how I did it. It was tough. And there's definitely more things that could be done to support women, full stop, at any stage that their children
Mhm.
are at.
And parents. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's not more often than not it's the woman that's struggling there, but yeah, there are. Yeah.
yeah,
Parents in
yeah.
general. Yeah. that could be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's been your biggest supporter on your journey as a business owner?
So interesting, maybe latterly my family, but they were pretty shocked when I did it and were when I set up the business and left full-time employment. So I think they were absolutely horrified. So yeah, and funnily enough, none of them are on Facebook or LinkedIn or anything like that. So I don't get any sort of boosts in terms of our presence and things through them. All lovely, really lovely people, but perhaps not so business minded. Although my dad, he was an entrepreneur, but he lives in South Africa and it was quite a long way away. My ex-husband, he was very supportive, encouraging, but I had to say probably the best support I've ever had is support that I've Oh, is a support that I found myself. As I said, I mentioned the RBS Accelerator program. Getting a coach was transformational, hugely supportive, but also very motivational. I met lots of other entrepreneurs, so that was brilliant. Finally, I met somebody who was speaking the same language because that transition from full-time employment to parenthood and entrepreneurship was really challenging on personal friendship groups. Because although I had some brilliant friends prior to that, A, I changed having children, but B, I changed having children because I was running a business and had no time. And probably my interests were different. And it's not like these people didn't like me, I hope not. And it wasn't, I just didn't like them. But what we had in common was
Yeah.
very different. So surrounding myself with entrepreneurs was amazing. And since that coach, I've had a life coach and I have another business coach. And in fact, that business coach has come in and she does coaching with my team, and which has been transformational with my team and the language we use and the culture that we've developed. But I'm also now providing coaching to two of my members of staff as well to help them on their journey. And I think a highly tuned athlete has a sports coach. Why
Absolutely.
shouldn't an entrepreneur? So sometimes I have to say to her, can you get out of coaching mode and go, am I just being an idiot? But having that trusted person who is there for you, you're paying them to be there for you, where there's no judgment. You haven't got to watch what you're saying in terms of saying the wrong thing in front of staff or offending people and things like that, who is just rooting for you in your success. That has been phenomenal. And I highly recommend a good coach in all aspects of your life, to be honest. So, yeah, that's probably been the biggest support that I've had.
That couldn't agree with you more as a
Well, you
business
are.
myself. That wasn't planned or anything,
No.
but that's exactly the right answer to that question. Thank you, Laura.
Indeed. Yeah, I suddenly realize that you are a coach yourself. It is, you wouldn't think of doing, one of the things I'm now doing is looking at just a lifestyle coach as well. It's about somebody else pointing out things that you're not seeing, challenging you. A lot is there already. I think perhaps my next stage of progression, though, is maybe joining some kind of, I think it's called Vistage or something, where there's more group stuff with other entrepreneurs again from different sectors. I think that would be really enhancing and would challenge me in different ways because I'm not the kind of person, because again, I've never worked in a letting agency. I've always challenged things. I've challenged how we've done things and any new tech that comes in. I'm like, how can we use that? Do we want to use that to make our lives better, our service better, save us time and everything else? But I think there's things that other businesses do that will be
Yeah.
transferable. So I think that would be quite fun just for my own intellectual stimulation and then things and new energy that I can bring to a business that's now 15 years old. But it doesn't feel like it's 15 years old because constant change, but constant evolution. We're just doing our brand refresh this year again, and we had a new website last year. So it's constant reinvestment and reinvigorating ourselves is really important.
I wanted to ask you about your team. So you started off yourself and your
Mhm.
husband. How many team members do you have now?
Oh, I always get this wrong. I think we're about 10 now. Yeah, yeah.
And what's that been like, bringing other people in? And you said that
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't work out. What's that journey been like, building a high performing, high standards
Yeah.
team?
That has been, without doubt, the most challenging aspect of this journey. And it's been a real roller coaster. The first employee, hugely exciting, also huge relief because I was juggling so many different things. I think a lot of entrepreneurs talk about that sort of journey. But I think the biggest challenge, there's so many different challenges, but it's the attracting the right staff with the right values, training them up, and then retaining them. And my staff are being spoken to by other agents all the time because we have such a good reputation. and we're doing things really well and to a high level. And I really encourage my team to be on LinkedIn and things like that because I want them to be proud of what they're doing and to really develop themselves because the more developed they are as people, the richer their lives are, but also the richer experience they can bring to the job, to our clients, working with our contractors and dealing with our tenants who span all different age brackets. And it just gives them just more empathy and awareness. But by doing that, people can see them and I really celebrate them. I think it's very much my responsibility to always make it a really attractive place to be. And I'm very open to being challenged. In fact, we're doing a workshop this week on what does flexibility look like. We've already got informal flexi time. We've got one working from home day. Everyone's got laptops. We've got Vitality Healthcare. We've got if you need an urgent doctor's appointment, you work your time back. And the team, they successfully managed that between them. I said, look, guys, as long as the work's getting done and no one's taking the mickey, I want you to manage it. As long as I don't need to get involved, I'm going to leave you to self-censor and make sure you're doing the right thing. And they really appreciate that. But I think it's this, you've got a generation of staff, it's not a job for life or even a job for 10 years. So I'm probably of the generation that came in thinking I'd have four big jobs, maybe 15 years each. How long I will work for? Maybe not, maybe 10 years each. Maybe I will work that long, I don't know. But now people have got so much pressure on them to be moving all the time. So I have other agents in Edinburgh trying to poach my staff. But also, one of my colleagues said to me years ago, she said, Laura, I'm constantly up against a narrative from my friends. I think she was about 25 at the time or 24. My friends are always saying to me, why are you still at Chapmans? Why are you still there? You need to be moving. You need to be chasing more money. You need to be chasing a job promotion. And she said, I'm really having to fight back saying, I'm actually getting rewarded here. I'm actually getting promotions, but I'm also deepening my knowledge and my experience. And I think there's a huge pressure on people to constantly be moving, to be seen, to be getting more and more things without developing the substance.
Mm.
And actually, you don't really develop all that substance unless you do it with the same place over and over again. And every day is a school day for me. I've been doing this for a long time. But also as a team, the more stable a team we've got of the right team players, the more flexibility we can offer, the more options. Because like, oh, you're great. We know you're going to do this. This is your strength. Could you help me with this? Or do you know what? We're so stable now. What else can we do in terms of flexibility? We really trust each other because we've got each other's back, or we know our clients so well that if someone's off on paternity leave, it's fine because, oh, we know Henry, we know Alistair, we know what they're going to need, and we'll cover for each other. And so my team is probably at its most stable. So they have challenged me a lot, and most of my conversations are about my team, how to keep them happy, but equally I also expecting certain things. And I think it was a couple of years ago, I said to my coach at the time, I said, look, I feel I'm now a managing director of this business. So I feel like I'm no longer part of the team. I feel I'm the MD, but I've started taking on a job that I didn't know I was going to do. I didn't read the job spec and I never applied for it. And it was quite a lonely place. So I think, again, as an entrepreneur, if you have other people around you who can help you on that journey, because you do move from being a teammate to a business owner, but it's then striking that balance. And I'm loving where I am right now that I've got because my team are so stable and I've got some of my senior people who've been with me for a long time. I'm now working a bit more with them and guiding them a little bit more. So it's exciting to see their development, but also exciting to collaborate a bit more again in terms of the journey. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And everybody lives their own lives and things happen. They have to move jobs or I lost a member of staff through unexpected health issues just when I'd had my second child. And these things happen and it's hard. It's really hard because ultimately the buck stops with you. But when it's working really well, it's incredibly rewarding, but not easy. That's the hardest part of the job, definitely, definitely.
I'm running out of time. I've got lots of questions in
Oh,
my head
sorry.
I could ask you, but we're running out of time. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, Laura, that I should have asked you? Anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I don't know. The only thing that really probably springs to mind is just the narrative about female-owned
Yeah.
businesses. I think they're extraordinary. I think they're unique. I think they're often very values led. And I'm not saying that male led businesses aren't. And actually, I've got a male member of staff who gives me a completely different perspective on things, which is hugely beneficial. And women can be hugely empowering and hugely supportive of each other. But I do think women need to work harder at also continuing to support each other. I think as a female boss, or if you become a female manager, I think you are held to a much higher account than your male sort of contemporaries. And I think whether you want to or not, I think you have to be more of an emotionally like empathetic leader because you can't get away with coming saying, get this done. And sometimes I really wish I could, but actually you can't. And I think it makes it more challenging. I think it makes it a much better culture, but I just still think there's a lot that be done. And I think women, if their default could be let's support other women and also let's empathize with a business owner who is a woman, that sometimes shit needs to get done. And if they held us to the same account, it would be helpful. I wouldn't want to go the whole way because I think, as I say, value empathetic led leadership is great, but it can be quite tiring, always being more touchy-feely.
So do you think that staff respond differently to female lead managers or leaders than they do to male managers or leaders?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've worked in three big companies. So I worked for Arthur Andersen, Bank of Scotland, and RBS. And I have worked in lots of other places like cafes, restaurants, Waitrose, you name it. But so my experience is limited by my own experience. But I just feel that men's behavior, if they're having an off day or whatever, is forgiven more. Oh, it's just so and so. Oh, it's just such and such. And also less envy. I think when a guy is really successful, it's, oh, mate, well done. How can I, a bit like the American thing, you got a Porsche, how do I get one? I think sometimes with women, is there a little bit of resentment, a little bit of jealousy? And I'm thinking in this situation of women working for women. In terms of men working for women, yeah, I don't know. I've never really thought about that. But what is interesting is I don't know how many times I go to events. And if I take my male member of staff with me, the number of people who talk to my male colleague as opposed to me, and it doesn't bother me, but it's just this natural, it's just, I don't know, it's just what seems to happen. And I'm just sitting there quietly going, I know I run a very successful business. I know I'm very good at what I do, and I don't need to prove anything. But I do feel men do sometimes have that unbiased advantage. I don't know.
You do think
It's a
that we
tough
should
one.
call it out? If we don't call that behaviour out, will it ever stop?
No, probably not. But I suppose there's ways and means of calling it out because if you call it out the wrong way, you alienate yourself further. I think for
Now,
me,
here's a question. Would a
yeah,
man think like that?
probably not.
No.
No, it's a really interesting one. And I think for me, I just go, do you know what? Do as you would be done by, and always stick with your own values because you can't go wrong. And every decision you make, if they're difficult decisions, you go, where are my values putting me here? What aligns most? And that really makes a huge difference. And the proof is in the pudding. I have people contact me all the time to want to buy my agency. I'm not for sale. The business isn't for sale, but it's taken me longer. But I think ultimately my next 10 years will be far more rewarding and financially, emotionally, and everything else as a result of the foundations that I've built and who I am. And the reputation has been hard earned, but I've got it. Yeah, I don't know. Your experiences make you who you are and how you behave. I do think it could definitely be a lot better, but I think women have a long way to go towards supporting other women on that journey.
Awesome. So that's the message. Help other women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that
Definitely.
comes up so many times in these conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess that's why I'm here. That's why the
Mhm.
podcast is here. That's what I'm doing, calling us all to help each other to start and scale and grow and have a real impact in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the results come the rewards come as a result of that. Yeah, so no regrets.
Laura, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the invitation, Brenda.
And thank you to you, the listeners, for listening to Scale Her Up. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and leave a review. It helps more female business owners find us. Come and join our Scale Her Up Facebook community to get support, accountability, and connection with other women who get it. And remember, only 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs are female, and men are still 5 times more likely to scale their business beyond £1 million in turnover than women are. When we start and scale our businesses to the same extent as men, we'll add £250 billion to the UK economy and create millions of jobs. Ladies, you can do it, and your business can make a massive difference.